Hello and welcome to SideQuest from Minor Realm Games. This podcast is all about the world of tabletop RPGs. I'm Alex and this is Bill, and today we will be discussing some foundational steps of finding a group and hosting gaming sessions. Hey, Bill.
Hey, Alex. It's wonderful to be back with you all. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of RealmCast. Alex and I are having a blast doing this side questing. We're leveling up like crazy with all of the adventures we've been running, and we have plenty more coming up for you. I guess I would start with thanking you all, as always, for checking us out on Twitch. Lots of cool things coming up for Minor Realm Games in the coming weeks. We have a Kickstarter to launch, Alex.
All right. Hey.
So that's coming down the pike here. MinorRealmGames.com will launch on August 9th, and that will coincide with our soft launch for Kickstarter. So cool games coming up. So by the time you hear this episode, it'll be about a week and some odd days and change to Gen Con Online. You can join us on twitch.tv/MinorRealmGames virtually all day for Gen Con Online, where I'll be conducting some virtual webinars on session prep, intro to session prep, and then I have a session after that, I think around 1 p.m. in the afternoon Eastern time, called Preparing Great Sessions. And so you'll get to kind of spend an afternoon with me, and then on the evening of the first, at 7 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time, we'll be premiering a Starfinder campaign on Twitch. So
awesome!
Called Artifice AG, and we're going to be running that for about 20 episodes. So it should be a lot of fun here coming up. Give us a follow at Minor Realm Games over Twitter. You can check us out now on Instagram as well, I believe. I think that got set up in the last couple of days. I don't know, Alex. There's a lot going on.
There's so much social media out there. If you go to your favorite social media platform and type in Minor Realm Games, you're probably going to find us there, and you'll be able to, keep close eye on what we're doing and how is it going over there.
Yeah, exactly. So, so I would say thanks again for checking us out. We look forward to giving you more podcast episodes. Probably going to keep it with YouTube and Spotify right now. And I think those are both platforms that are being fairly heavily adopted by podcast listeners. So, and if you guys want it to be on other mediums, just let us know, and we'll look into it. But otherwise, Alex, let's get into the show.
All right, Bill. So the what is said to be the hardest step of starting a gaming session and gaming groups, I actually believe it is the second hardest step. But finding a group, finding a group of like-minded individuals that want to sit around a table and chuck dice or tell stories is one of the hardest things to do. What are some tips and tricks that we can use, and some platforms that you are aware of that we can help get people into around the table with each other?
I think the one that I heard years ago, and the one that I actually used when I moved here to DC, how you and I met, is Meetup. I think Meetup is awesome. It's sort of secretly become unspokenly become the place where tabletop roleplay gamers meet to form games. I had a lot of success there. I'll be honest, though. It's funny. I mean, you and I know this story. I posted as, hey, I'm looking for a game as a player on Meetup across several channels in the DC area. And nothing, like crickets.
Right.
I jumped into a couple of threads. Hey, you guys still looking for players, kind of thing. You got to be a little bit of a lurker. You're kind of stalking.
It's not
players.
creepy. It's okay.
Yeah, it's not creepy. It's D&D. And then I was kind of like, you know what? Screw it. And I made a posting. Hey, I'm a DM running a game. Boom, 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 boom. I just it lit up like jackpot in Vegas immediately with 15 and some odd people were applying or emailing me. Hi, I want to be in a game. And that's how we eventually curated it and got our group established here in DC. So Meetup actually treated me very well. What about you?
I have to say for Meetup, I have a 100% accomplishment rate. So the one time I ever tried to use Meetup was when I found our group. It was at my wife's behest. She's like, hey, you should check out this app. It might help you find a D&D group here in the area, because we've only lived in DC now about 2 years, so we're relatively new here as well. So yeah, Meetup was great. I like to call our group the Unicorn, because within about a week of us all finding each other, and we were sitting around the table, which was fantastic. Week or so. I know that some other people have had, especially in the past, Craigslist, which is now like, it's got its own little reputation is the word I was looking for. Yeah. And some Facebook groups that can help you along with those. And then much like we were saying a minute ago with Minor Realm Games, you can just scour the internet for social media stuff and looking in your area for that.
Yeah, Craigslist, I think, belongs on the dark web at this point. It's like
right.
It's not a place that I want to go.
No.
To find things. Facebook's got a lot of stuff. You know what? Just on that topic though, like Facebook has a lot of groups for D&D, like a lot of groups, like
right. Yeah.
Thousands of groups for D&D. But goodness gracious, guys, like I find so much like infighting and trolling and stuff going on those boards. I mean, it's just there's a lot of people that are really upset about gaming. I don't know what it is, but so I try not to read or feed into that at all. I mean, I certainly don't contribute, but I try not to even read those half the time. If you can find cool, smaller, more local, independent Facebook groups, that's cool. But the big juggernaut ones, like the ones with tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of people in them, just forget it. There for the memes and ignore the rest.
Exactly. That's exactly what I was just about to say. I'm in a handful of them, and I'm there for the memes and the random good homebrew stuff that comes up that's just interesting. But again, like you said, we're all trying to play games. Like what works at my table is not going to work at their table, which is not going to work at somebody from Thailand's table. We're all trying to tell stories and have fun. So like you said, like let's stop the infighting and let's just have some meaningful discussion and about just playing games for sure.
Unless you're listening to me, of course, then it will work at your table.
Right.
But
yes,
I jest, of course.
All right. So now we found the group and we've got everybody who wants to be sitting around the table now. But this is what I think is the hardest part is the scheduling. Like myself and you, we both are full-time people, multiple jobs, multiple commitments. And then we also have 3 other people that sit around our table with us when you and I get together, and they're all full-time people as well. Like, so just trying to juggle that. Any comment on trying to be scheduling and so forth?
Yeah, I mean, I think, save for the world being on fire outside, that our group did a really good job of getting a lot of game time in for the first several months, and I was really impressed by everybody's sort of dedication, and I think that's what it comes down to. You have to kind of understand where everybody's mentality is around playing. If it's like I've played a time or two and it'd be fun to play again sort of thing, but I'm kind of busy and I haven't made a lot of time in the past for it kind of player, it's going to be really tough to pin them down after a while to keep coming back. On the opposite end, when you have players that are really enthusiastic, they love it, they look forward to it almost every single week, they're going to try to make time and make space in their schedule. So have conversations with your crew around what their overall interest level / availabilities typically are. You'll try to find a happy medium there. Set that expectation early on of, hey, I'd like to ideally game every other week or maybe on Thursdays, but if we miss a couple here and there, that's fine if stuff pops up. I would say from the beginning, don't try to say, this game is going on every Monday from now until 2023. Like that's right. Not going to happen, right?
Yeah.
And also, like, I think for a long time as a game master and as well as a host and an organizer, I really did look forward to my players being able to meet certain expectations and certain times where we could get together, convenience wise. And it just doesn't line up. So don't set yourself up for disappointment either when things push. As you mentioned, goodness gracious, I have so much that seems to be going on all the time. I've had to push sessions a lot in the last year, which I've never really done before, which doesn't feel good either. So I just be honest, be open. And if you have people that are willing to open up their schedules or move stuff or push stuff, that to me is a great telltale sign of a player that's really interested in your game and dedicated.
Agreed.
If they say, you know what, I have something going on Thursday night, but I can push it and I can move it. If everybody else is in, I'm in. That's great. Compromise is really important. If you find that you have a player that is consistently blowing off the game, or they can never really move their schedule for stuff that's like, this isn't life or death, or like, hey, this is a job, I have to do this to literally put food on the table for my family. If they just kind of seem pretty blasé and lackadaisical with their scheduling, then maybe it's time to have a conversation of like, hey, we keep trying to make days work and it doesn't seem like you can play. Are you sure you still want to be in the campaign, kind of thing? It's okay to have those conversations as well. So
for sure. I know that when, we got started, it was real hot and heavy. We were playing, I think the first 3 weeks we had like 4 sessions in, like we just burned through them. And it was too much on my end. And one of the hardest things in our group for me was to bring up like, hey guys, I gotta knock this down, because it's too much of a thing on my time. And what was really cool is because I put it out to the group in the way that I did, and how awesome our group is, everybody was real receptive to it. So we went from every Tuesday or Wednesday to then every other, and still having that flexibility where we're like, hey, this week's not really good for us, so we just gotta, John's not going to be there, so we'll just push back a week, or we'll see if we can move things around inside the week. But nobody, to the best of my knowledge, nobody was butthurt or angry.
No,
as we've had to kind of move things around. But really, that's just it. Like you said a second ago, compromise. Compromise is the way to do it. That's how adults should figure out and do things together in general.
Exactly. I think it was a testament to how much fun everybody was having, that we were playing so much.
Absolutely.
It does. And by the way, if you have a group out there where you're gaming once to twice a week, every single week in your campaign, keep on keeping on. But I know for a lot of groups that does really create burnout. It creates DM, game master burnout of prepping and getting something together because you have to think, right? My ratio is like for every 3 to 4 hours we play, I'm probably prepping for several hours. So,
right.
And I have a more strict regimen or ratio when it comes to certain games or systems or campaigns, but it's almost a 1-to-1 for me. Every hour we play, I've prepped for an hour at least. So, that you have to, when you factor that time in, you factor the time when you're spending offline, sort of scheduling and corralling or talking about it, and then getting back to the table again. It's a lot, right? It's a lot to be playing every 4 to 10 days in that period, over and over. So find a pace that works for you guys. Honestly, if you're playing a campaign, that it'll probably support the health and longevity of your campaign if you work out a schedule that works for everybody's benefit early on.
Absolutely. And, just don't be afraid to bring up issues that you've got,
Absolutely.
So location. They talk about location as the biggest, one of the biggest things to do in business, but it's also really pretty important with tabletop role playing. You don't want to be tucked inside of a coat closet, with a bunch of junk and garbage all over the place, literally sitting on top of each other, in addition to the world of COVID. Like, you just don't want to mess with that. So I know that for our first session that we ran in our campaign a couple months ago, my apartment building has a big open area, big long table. We came in and set up and had places to move around and so on and so forth. What kind of location, what kind of spaces do you think that players and game masters need to make things work for them?
Yeah, they're all different. We see online now a lot of these custom made gaming tables and these big like Joe Manganiello kind of like size halls of D&D halls, and the Gary Gygax Memorial Dungeon, I think is what he calls his. It's like so badass. It's such a cool piece of architecture that he fitted inside with all this decor and memorabilia and stuff. But any space that you guys are comfortable in, just as people, like, I think about like, hey, where would I want to have a meal or sit and hang out for a couple hours? I mean, it's fine, right? Whatever works for you. I've played D&D in tabletop games in all sorts of spaces.
Right.
My the apartment that I lived in several years ago, wow, quite a while ago now, was just like tiny. I mean, tiny in this kitchen. It was like a leaf like style pub table that was pressed up against the kitchen window where I was sitting. And you know me, I'm not a very small guy, and I'm sort of pressed up against the corner of this tiny little kitchen on this leaf table. And I had 4 other people sitting around this, like the other end of this table, and we're all just huddled up rolling dice, right? I've played in bars on bar tabletops with people huddled around, and I've played in giant halls, and now I have a pretty nice sized table in my house that a good friend of mine, shout out to Jeff Stobie if you're listening to this, he did a phenomenal job on this beautiful table that we have.
Absolutely, it's gorgeous,
and yeah, and I think that's a really nice sized table for a group of like 4 to 6 to play on. So give people just have to feel comfortable. If everybody's cool, hey, is this comfortable for you? Or they have access to food and beverage bathroom, then it's probably going to be fine. I think about people sitting for hours on end, or the chair's super uncomfortable, that sort of stuff.
Right.
You want to take these things into account when hosting. But what I found is, honestly, if your game's good enough, it's compelling enough, everybody's laughing, they're having fun, they're carrying on. Maybe it gets really serious and dramatic. They're really immersed into the story, and they're lost in that. Kind of matters less and less over time where you're playing at.
For sure. The playing around a bar has always been something that I've wanted to do, but I've got terrible hearing, and all of the background noise would wreak havoc on anything that I was trying to hear or say or do. But I just love the idea of that, sitting around in a half, you meet in a tavern type, that whole thing, sitting in a darkness of sorts and playing D&D in a bar. It just sounds wonderful. All right. So what do you think about this with going all out for your session 0? Like, do you think it's setting yourself up for failure, or do you think it's like getting people hooked? For example, my wife loves to host, huge spread of food. She always tries to make it feel like you're eating in a tavern. So like she'll make beef stew with bread bowls or chicken wings, and but not like Buffalo Wild chicken wings, like roasted, fired, old school, simple flavors, but real, very heavy in the setting. Cheese and meat tray. For the last session that we did, she tried to get like real wooden plates and stuff, but it was just like cost prohibitive. So like, well, we're only going to use these like every 6 months or so, so we don't need to spend this aggressive amount of money on wooden plates.
Yeah.
But do you think that's setting yourself up for failure, or do you think that gets people hooked right away?
So I know that you're probably fishing for compliments for your wife, and by the way, you never have to fish hard in my lake, because that was just our session 0 particularly. You guys were just incredible hosts, and I've always tried to host with a hey, I want people to feel really comfortable. I want them to be well fed. I want them to be, if you're into having a few adult beverages late at night while you play, I want the fridge to be well stocked. I think that's just great. It makes for a more fun environment. I look at D&D night or tabletop gaming night as a party. It's a hangout.
Right.
It should be fun. It should be a comfortable, nice atmosphere. I like to make sure the place is tidied up. There's some candles lit. It smells nice. It's
right.
And then people's bellies are full and they got a nice little buzz on. I mean, like, that's fun. You're only going to have more fun. So I think, setting it up early to facilitate that kind of environment for people. Now, I mean, no, is it sustainable to put together Christmas feasts every single week or every other week? No. And I don't think anybody reasonably would expect that. I mean, you guys were really cool with the fact of like, we all kind of took turns chipping in, and after a while, like after you guys hosted the session 0, we moved it over to my place. I was hosting for a while. I'd make, big spreads every here and there. And
Right.
And then you guys were kind of like, hey, well, you don't have to do this every week, or at least let us help. And I think that's what you really ideally want is party appreciates it. Everybody's having a good time with it. Everybody will chip in. Right. So.
Absolutely. And I got to tell you, so not to just, pat each other on the back the entire time through our conversation here. But
I know people are going to get nauseated with this episode quickly.
The food that you put out for our all the stuff, like you are a phenomenal cook, and it was absolutely delicious. So just cook good food, make it fun. Even if it's just pizza and beer, and that's what your people like, then great. That doesn't have to be anything a huge spread or anything crazy. But if you want to go all out, go for it. And if you're the host and it gets to a point where it becomes cost prohibitive or it's just a lot of extra time, don't be afraid to ask your fellow players, because hey, Bill repeatedly was like, no. And finally we just broke him down and we just told him no, we're not accepting no for an answer. What's your Venmo? We're going to give you money. This is not a negotiation anymore. And he finally relented, and the rest of our group was able to at least financially contribute while he continued to make us phenomenal food. But just don't be afraid to ask questions and talk to your fellow players about that.
Yeah, I take a lot of pride in that. Maybe I'll do a D&D food podcast at some point.
I'm in. Let's make that happen.
Awesome.
All right. So tools of the trade, Bill. Pen, paper,
iPad, laptop.
What all do we need for our hosting sessions? What are the key tools of the trade?
As much as or as little as you want. I've seen my game actually transform to digital over the last few years. Sometimes I really like just showing up with like a character sheet, a notepad or a piece of paper and a pencil, some dice. That like sort of minimalism and the roots and fundamental of the game is really cool for me. But man, have they made it so convenient for everything to be sort of on your tablet now?
Right.
These applications and these tool sets that have become digitized, like it's just awesome. So really whatever you're comfortable with, whatever you feel like helps you streamline, or whatever you find value in, I'd say do it. I've played and have seen players plenty of times just do paper pencil. I find more and more now, the more I get, tables together, that everybody's got their tablet with them. So it's just, I think for me, the grognard, like, iPad or D&D Beyond, that's 5e BS. That's stuff you see on the internet or whatever. It's like, who cares? I mean, honestly, I think people would have been, if these types of technologies and these applications were available 20 or 30 years ago, there'd be a lot more people using them, right? So,
oh yeah,
I mean, there is some, like, when I'm playing AD&D, do I flip through the books often? No, not necessarily. Is there something really satisfying about flipping through a first edition Dungeons and Dragons book, when you're playing? Yes. Do I want to be buried in the book and lug around all those books with me all the time? No, I don't. So I think whatever floats your boat, man. I don't know.
Absolutely. I think that one of the cool things that we've done, or just in general, what's kind of gone around the world, is just all of the openness. Even though, like, we started the podcast talking about, people online just fighting all the time, but there is so much openness between the grognards and the new players and the people the old guys that yell, "Get off my lawn!" Like, right? Yeah, there's certain aspects of that's nice, but if it makes this player more comfortable to sit around and have their tablet, then that's all the better. And you know what? When it's time to level up in the middle of a session, that player's going to be done that much faster because it's all streamlined for them.
I was just going to say, I'd much rather have somebody with a tablet in front of them that lets them click a couple things and do what they want than them buried in their player's handbook,
right?
And getting lost and then trying to interpret something, and they miss key aspects in what's going on in the event or the scene around them in game because they're so focused on okay, how do I do that? And I don't want to hold up the turn or the initiative order or whatever when it gets to me. That, yes, I mean, that has been a part of the game for a long time, but it doesn't have to be. That's the point. Like, it's a wouldn't it be nice scenario come to life, where wouldn't it be nice if initiative order just kind of breezed right on through and it felt like real-time combat? Wouldn't it be nice if everybody was prepared, if they actually made a conscious effort, of course, that is a prerequisite, on their turn when it gets their turn, or everybody knew how to do or could do what they wanted to do without fail, or with a lot more ease, right? We've brought that reality to life. D&D Beyond, companies like that, right? You know, there are a lot of other obviously awesome online tools and resources that comes to mind, though, and while I'm not plugging them, it's definitely become quickly the most ubiquitous and I'd say useful, at least for 5e. But you know, yeah, it puts the player in a position where they can be more comfortable to just play the game.
For sure. I've got one guy in the game that I run that is definitely an old grognard. It took us probably 9 or 10 months to finally convince him to start using D&D Beyond, because it's a Roll20 campaign, so it's all online. And Jeremy had index cards with his spells out. I mean, he was very, very grognard like. But again, we dragged him kicking and screaming to get onto the the digital toolbox.
Yeah, it's like, well, yeah. Then you look at Roll20 and Fantasy Grounds. That's a whole other thing, right? Now you're looking at VTTs. You can actually load your character sheets into those platforms. Literally, click a few buttons, and they will automate what you want to do. You know, actually, it's funny because my group is so used to, you know, at least now we do Zoom and sort of roll your own dice and honor system a lot of the time.
Right.
And I know you and I have played a handful of those as well, but that's kind of like our MO, and that's what we do even on Twitch a lot of the time. We don't usually use VTT. For the Starfinder campaign that I'll shamelessly plug again, coming up 7 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. It's called Artifice AG over Gen Con weekend, August 1st, 7 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. We will have a VTT component for this one. So we're using Roll20.
Nice.
And by the way, Roll20, I'm not necessarily plugging you. You're our virtual tabletop of choice for now. We'll see. Reach out if you're interested in keeping us there. Yeah, my crew was really really comfortable, and they were just kind of blown away at the fact that they could load their character sheets in there and just click buttons to automate their roles and their actions and stuff, because it is a more mechanically heavy system, especially when compared to like a D&D 5e. There's just a lot more to it, and that ease of play and that quick sort of pick it up and run with it, because of the tool sets in the platform, made our session 0 the other night a lot more seamless than we were all sort of expecting. So, you know, I don't see any problem with, as long as people are having fun and they're getting value out of it.
Absolutely. So as we're starting to wrap up here, do you have any final thoughts or tips, tricks, ideas on how to make everyone a little more comfortable as you kind of first meet up and get it around the table for the first time? Yeah,
get to know each other as people. Get to know what each other wants out of a game, and don't be afraid to have awesome open dialogue outside of in-game chat. For new groups, I think that's really important. Honestly, for my friends and I, and groups that have been gaming together for a long time, we're always chatting back and forth about the game and about other stuff. So I think the better a relationship you have with your players outside of the table, it'll pay dividends in game. Your chemistry, your expectations of one another, better understanding play styles and personalities, all of that goes a really long way. So from a GM or host perspective as well, take note of those things. Sometimes we get really wrapped up in taking note of like what Alex's character wants, as opposed to Alex the person, because our characters are extensions of ourselves. And once you understand the player better, their motivations, their personality, what drives them, how talkative or social they are, what they actually like, what they're interested in, what they do for a living, you'll get a really good idea of how they're going to play the game.
Absolutely, for sure. I can't. I second that. I can't add anything to that. Just open up and don't be afraid to be a little bit vulnerable. We're all getting around the table, even if you feel nervous or out of place or whatever. You're sitting around a table with a bunch of people who, whether they'll admit it or not, kind of feel the same way to an extent. Especially if it's a brand new group of people, you don't know how much is too much. Should I do voices as the player? Especially, should I do voices? Should I get animated with my movements, or should I stand up and walk around, or just do what makes you feel comfortable? And if the table is open to having fun and stuff, they'll just see that you're having fun and playing the game that we're all trying to enjoy, and maybe you'll pull out some of the animation and voices and extra things that they're holding back currently.
Right on.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, Demons and Dinosaurs, we have just started to scratch the surface here, and I'd like you all to join us next time here on SideQuest, when we're going to continue our discussion on group dynamics and hosting sessions, with moving into session 0.
So many things to plug. So many things to talk about right now for Minor Realm Games. I'm so excited. I'm fired up on everything you guys will be seeing over the next few weeks. Give us a follow over Twitter at Minor Realm Games for all live updates. We have a Facebook page, Instagram, all at Minor Realm Games, and watch us game every week. I guess if you're listening to this on Thursday the 23rd, which is when this episode will drop, then you can catch us on Twitch Sunday night, 5 p.m. to 8 p.m., on our series finale of Clock Strike Zero, Minor Realm Games' first original module. So we look forward to seeing you all over there. And for Alex, this is Bill. Happy gaming.